call the meeting to order. Bruce, you want to do the roll call so we know who's here officially?
Okay, Commissioner Robert Hannon,
I'm here.
Richard Berlandi,
Here.
David Fox,
Here.
Robert Eisner,
Here.
Neil Kelsey,
Here.
Mark Simpson,
Here.
Ned Stanchion, Robert Canto,
Here.
and Emily Brick. All right, sir.
All right, and Dave, I just want to make a comment. Your volume is good tonight. I don't really have to lean into the screen to hear you. So whatever you're doing, please keep it up.
I'll try.
Okay, thank you. First item on the agenda, public hearing, Bulwark LLC, lots 8120 and 8122 Colt Highway. Notice when in the paper, notice is hereby given that the Inland Wetlands Commission will hold an online public hearing on Wednesday, July 20th, 2022 at 7 p.m. via an online web conference on the following application. Bulwark LLC application for regulated activity within wetlands and upland review area related to proposed self-storage facility located on lots 8120 and 8122 Colt Highway, located north of 242 Colt Highway. Interested parties are encouraged to participate in this online public hearing. The link to the town meeting may be found at the Town of Farmington's website. I won't read it, but it's indicated there. A copy of the proposal is also online with the website given. Or please call the Planning Department in Farmington Town Hall at 860-675-2325, dated in Farmington, Connecticut, this 30th day of June, 2022. Inland Wetlands Commission, Robert Hannon, Chairman. So I believe the applicant is online.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Shall we
go ahead.
proceed?
We'll
Okay.
get the public hearing started and you get to go first.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Robin Pearson. I'm an attorney with the firm of Alter and Pearson in Glastonbury, Connecticut, and I represent the applicant this evening, Bulwark LLC. This, as noted by the chairman, is an application for 8120 and 8122 Colt Highway, which is on the north side of the highway, and involves approximately 4.99 acres. We presented the application to you on June 15th, 2022. And at that meeting, you officially received the application, accepted it. You did find that the activities proposed were significant and you scheduled it for tonight's public hearing. You also subsequently conducted a site walk on July 9th, 2022. And since then, we've received a set of comments from the town engineering department dated July 15th, as well as the agenda review, both of which documents raise certain questions and also have mentioned areas for additional information that might be helpful to the commission in making a decision on this application. What we propose to do tonight is to go through the application in detail because it is a public hearing, so we do have to repeat information that you might have listened to before, but this is the opportunity for the public to have a chance to get acquainted with the application and to provide any comments that it may have with regard to what we are proposing. And then we also want to take this opportunity to respond to outstanding comments that we received, and of course to answer any questions that you might have, and not just with regard to the materials that we've submitted, but also with regard to anything that you found on your site walk that you would wish that we would go into more detail on with you. On the call with me this evening should be Matt Morris for the applicant, David Ziax with FHA Hesketh and Associates, the lead engineer on this proposal, And also Anthony Zemba, who is a certified ecologist and certified soil scientist, who has provided additional information to you. He is with Land Tech, and you should have, as part of your materials this evening, some additional work that he has done with regard to questions that came up. They include a analysis that he did when he revisited an area that was identified as a potential vernal pool, though at the time of his initial review, he did not believe that it was, but he did revisit the site and has provided you with a memorandum that describes his finding as a result of that revisit. And then there is also a memorandum in the file now that is dated today, which responded to questions that were raised in the documents that we received from staff and with regard to the agenda review. So actually, before I turn it over to Dave Ziyax, I'd just like to say one thing, which is that we understand that your next meeting is not until September 7th. And I just want to put on the record for you this evening that should you decide to keep this hearing open, that we would, of course, provide you with a written consent to do so and to continue this to the September 7th meeting. So with that, I'd like to, pardon me?
Thank you for that.
Okay. For that, I'd like to ask Dave Ziyax to proceed with his presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Dave Ziyax. I'm the principal professional engineer and the president at F.A. Hesketh Associates. Our office is located over in East Granby. One thing that I wanted to put into the record too, maybe Robin was going to do that later, but the legal notices were properly mailed as dictated by the regulations, and the public hearing sign for this hearing was put on the property on June 9th, well, by myself. So it's been up since June 9th. As Robin was pointing out, the location is the two lots. We have that small 8120 lot, which is way over to the west side. The bulk of the site is 8122, and it's 4.99 acres altogether, located over on the north side. It's about a third of a mile by my measurement from the Hampton Inn light. And the site is currently mostly wooded and undeveloped, and to our knowledge has never been previously developed for any purposes. The original plan set that went in with the application was dated June 3rd. And then we submitted a revised set of plans dated July 8th, which is really what we're looking at this evening. We have not submitted any new plans since July 8th. In your package, you had sheet LA1. This is a colored rendering that Shannon has put up to better illustrate some of the wetland characteristics and the general layout of the site. All of the zoning data is typical zoning data is shown on LA1, which gives you the orders of magnitude and the specificity as relates to the zoning data table required. The wetland system that we're looking at is basically goes through the middle of the site and then curves left and right along the northerly boundary line. That's the line that's indicated in the green on this drawing. And that wetlands flagging was completed by Land Tech's wetlands experts, and Anthony will talk about that a little bit in a few minutes. There are 1.02 acres of the 4.99 acres on the property is flagged wetlands. Most of the project site falls within the 150-foot upland review area associated with that green line. So 3.51 acres of the 4.99 acres falls within the 150-foot regulated area. Except for the soils that are actually within the wetland area itself, the rest of the site is primarily Holyoke rock outcrop, which is basically rock and bedrock with an earth overburden that can range anywhere from 2 to 6 feet over the top of the underlying rock. It's not unlike many of the sites along Route 6 that have been developed and remain undeveloped. and primarily to the west of the site. There's a lot of that type of topography on the undeveloped sites. The existing topography has a mix of high points and dips and valleys, as we witnessed in our field walk back a couple of Saturdays ago. The layout is typical of self-storage facilities that have existed and are being built right now throughout the region. We've come up with a design that has one main driveway cut to Route 6 and an additional exit driveway further to the east that will be right turnout only. We've included that for the purposes of letting larger vehicles go out that way that may be wrapping around that building on the east side, and also for the fire department to be able to exit the site properly if they happen to bring their fire truck onto the property. It's been placed to maximize the sight line on Route 6, which we know is a challenge, and also just for general site circulation. Over on the left-hand side of the development, the west side, there will be 3 one-story buildings, 3,700 square feet to 5,600 square feet. Those would be the traditional type of buildings that you see in these types of facilities, where each bay has a garage door, and you would have access to that individual garage door where you can put your personal belongings and store them there. And on the right-hand side, there'll be 1 3-story building, which will have a 19,900 square foot footprint. And because it's 3 stories, that would be 59,700 square feet in total. This will be a heated and a cooled building, which has now become popular with a lot of folks using these self-storage facilities. They like to have their merchandise or their personal belongings heated and cooled and not left out to the elements in a building that is not either heated or cooled like you typically have in these self-storage facilities. We do have a connection driveway that connects the west and east sides together. We really don't feel that we can use Route 6 as a connection between the 2 sides. We believe that we've placed this wetland crossing in the area that poses the least impact to the wetland corridor. It necks down in this area, and this area has been disturbed somewhat by the DOT's actions associated with maintenance along the edge of Route 6, and the fact that a large amount of stormwater is discharged from the Cold Highway. I'll explain that in a minute or two, into this portion of the wetlands, and then goes under a culvert under Route 6. We have the absolute minimum parking required. We have 4 spaces, a handicap space, and one or two spaces for employees, and possibly one or two spaces for customers that may need to park there for a short period of time. In the building that's over on the left-hand side, the multi-story building, the loading will be in the rear in the notch behind the building. So you can pull up your car or your truck in that location, and then you'll have the main entrance door, and you can go in and use elevators if necessary to get up to the floors. We've done extensive use of retaining walls to minimize our overall site footprint. These walls are generally not very tall. They're in the order of 6 or 7 feet tall for the most part, and less than that. And we've gone ahead and probably used more than you might have, but we felt it was necessary to do that and to maintain a reasonable distance between the flag wetlands and the face, the limit of our development. We will need to excavate pad sites on both the left and right sides to accommodate the buildings. So as you had the commission members that walk the site could see, we have topography that's sort of all over the place, and we need to create relatively level pad sites to accommodate the buildings and the driveways around the buildings. The maximum coverage that is allowed in this zone is 40%, and all of our impervious coverages are under that. We're at about 39.1%. That includes the buildings and all of the pavement. For the drainage, we've completed a comprehensive analysis report dated June 3rd, I believe, and we provided that to staff. Your engineering department has had a chance to review that. The property is actually a very small part of the overall Bass Brook watershed, which starts north of here and continues to the south. It primarily flows downstream through culverts under the highway to what is known as the Deadwood Swamp, which is further to the south of this site, and it's a rather extensive wetland system down in that area. Most of the runoff from Route 6 in this portion of the highway is by sheet runoff to the north side of Route 6. And actually the highway in this area is slightly super elevated, which means it pitches from the south to the north. And that's for geometry associated with the very large curve that exists in Route 6 at this location. That drainage then flows, gets collected along the northerly side on our property, and then goes under a 36-inch culvert, or through a 36-inch culvert under Route 6, and again continues to the south to the swamp. In designing our drainage system, we had 4 goals basically in mind. Because the topography of the site has runoff heading to various points along the edge of the wetlands on both the west and the east side, we wanted to have several small discharge locations to sort of mimic the existing sheet flow from the existing topography to the wetlands. A lot of times you'll see projects that come before you where drainage systems are used throughout, and then sort of the flow keeps getting consolidated, maybe over to a detention basin or something of that, and then released via some sort of an outlet structure, but it ends up being a fairly large consolidated discharge point. By doing this system that we have, we now have 4 locations where there's a relatively small amount of flow coming at any one of those locations. And it sort of mimics the application of the water to the wetlands as it exists out there today. We were successful in maintaining the peak flow rates below the existing conditions heading downstream for all the storms, 2 through 100-year storm events. We have provided water quality treatment, including some infiltration, we believe, with the underground systems that we have employed, that we will get some underground infiltration. We have not used that sort of credit in our calculations. We have just assumed storage in determining peak rates, but I think that ends up being a fairly conservative design, because there will certainly be some infiltration in the site once we get into excavation and installation of our systems, which will be surrounded by stone and other gravel materials. We will get some infiltration. And then we've also added hydrodynamic separators to the outlet points, which will give us our pollution removals that are mandated by Connecticut DEP. We did manage to introduce some LID feature, principally a rain garden that will be constructed along the face of the easterly building. It will collect sheet runoff in that area and then blend into our storm drainage system. But we have a nice rain garden proposed in that area there to capture the runoff before we're to reach Route 6. So in all, we believe our goals have been met with this design, and they are consistent with your town engineering standards and Connecticut DEP standards for water quality and for overall stormwater design. As far as utilities go, we don't need a lot. We'll be installing a water main up Route 6 from basically where the apartments are that are right next to the Hampton Inn. The water main was left at that location by the Connecticut Water Company for the purposes of serving Route 6 maybe someday. So we'll be extending that water main up to our site, to our driveway. Most of that's for fire protection for the multi-story building, but obviously we can use it for whatever domestic use we need for our toilets and the like, and because we will need some bathrooms. And we will be installing a small on-site septic system over to sort of right where the hand is there now. There's actually a pocket of some decent soil right in that area, but the system's going to be tiny. It only needs to be 50 to 75 gallons per day for the toilets that we'll need and sinks that we'll need for the employees. at the site, and possibly a customer who might want to use the bathroom. As far as the wetlands disturbances being proposed, again, most of the site falls within the 150-foot upland review area. So our disturbance is 2.99 acres of that 3.51 acres that is, on our site and within the footprint of our development. We have the driveway crossing, which will have a direct temporary disturbance during construction of 2,750 square feet, and then a permanent disturbance of 2,350 square feet with 400 square feet of that remaining in the open culvert we're proposing there. Now, if you recall early, our initial proposal was for a 36-inch diameter pipe that would match the diameter of the pipe going under the Route 6 corridor. But in discussions with staff and our initial discussions with the commission, I think everybody agreed that a box culvert would be a better solution that would have a natural bottom to it. And in doing that, we'll have 400 square feet of the wetlands will remain in the open box culvert. So we end up with a permanent disturbance net of about 2,350 square feet with that crossing. Both sides of the crossing will be contained with retaining walls to minimize the footprint. And I think in general that we believe that we will qualify for a general permit with the Army Corps of Engineers. It would be general permit number 18. I think this design will qualify for that. We will be applying for or notifying the Corps for a general permit once this commission were to approve this application. And we would go for a general permit in that regards. If it requires some other permit from the Corps, some other level of permit, then obviously that's our responsibility, and we would apply for that accordingly. But we believe we should fall within the general permit design standards. Mitigation that's being proposed, we're using, again, extensive use of retaining walls to minimize our overall footprint and avoid any kind of slope down to the edge of the wetlands or in proximity to the wetlands. We're using an open bottom culvert at the crossing. We have included extensive mitigation plantings that are shown on sheet MI1. Staff has made some additional recommendations that we feel we can comply with, and of course, whatever else the commission may think. Since the original submission, we've added 2 proposed mitigation areas that would be heavily planted. I've indicated those with those sort of hatched blobs on the south side of the driveway. Looking at it again in the field, it looks like an excellent place to do that. That's where most of the runoff from the state highway accumulates. And in those areas, there's a sizable amount of road sand and other debris associated with the roadway. These proposed mitigation areas will do, I think, the additional benefit will help treat some of the runoff coming from Route 6 before it reaches that culvert. And those 2 areas would be, they would total about 2,601 square feet. So slightly more than the permanent disturbance that that will result from our crossing. There's been some questions and comments regarding excavation and rock removal issues. We have a construction management consultant working with the applicant to do preliminary reviews and cost estimates and the like for the applicant. And their preliminary estimates indicate that there'll be 20 to 25,000 cubic yards of total excavation, added together on both sides. A lot of that will be rock requiring machine ripping and some blasting. But for the most part, the materials will remain on the site. We'll process them on the site, and we'll use those for backfill in the walls and for process base under the buildings and under the bituminous concrete or the asphalt driveways on the site. So there'll be very little of that excavated material removed from the site. Obviously, the trees that are cut down and a lot of the topsoil mix, that will be removed from the site like you would on a conventional construction. We will be able to retain some of the topsoil for planting purposes, but that tree debris and topsoil will be removed from the site. But the vast majority of the soils and rock that are excavated on the site will be reused on the site. And really, the most of the excavation takes place over on the westerly portion of the site, mainly because there are two relatively large knobs underneath that pad site for the west side buildings. Over on the east site, there's actually not that much excavation necessary, certainly not any deep excavations to construct the large building there and the pad site for that building. Most of the rock is over on the much more hilly west side of the site. Taking very quickly the idea of the feasible and prudent alternatives that we considered. There are no other direct wetland disturbances proposed except for the unavoidable driveway crossing in the culvert installation. We really think that, as an alternative, building two driveway cuts out to Route 6 directly is really not a feasible and prudent alternative when you consider the safety aspects of using Route 6 for that purpose. We have used extensive amount of retaining walls along the perimeter rather than proposing any slope grading along the edges of the flagged wetlands areas to maximize the buffer to the wetlands and provide adequate space for our mitigation plantings that we're proposing. And short of not building anything on the site, we think that we have come up with the best feasible and prudent alternatives of the specific aspects of the design, as I just mentioned. There's also been some discussion and comment regarding the distances to the flagged wetland limits, again, other than the crossing, which obviously has a direct impact. On the west side, the distance between really would be the face of the wall of our retaining wall and the edge of the wetlands. In all cases, that's greater than 25 feet. And because, as you can see, the wetlands line is sort of a snaky little line. There's no real straight portions of the wetlands line. And for that matter, our edge of our development is kind of a snaky little curvy line. So we don't have a lot of long parallel instances where the development and the wetlands are parallel to each other. But in the west side, we're greater than 25 feet. And then over on the east side, again, we have mostly curved pavement or walls and not a lot of parallel to the flagged wetland situation. And in those cases, we are at least 22 feet and in some cases greater than 25 feet from the bottom face of the retaining walls to the tightest points. Except we do have two pinch points, what I'm calling pinch points, where the wetlands flagging took place and created a bulge, if you will, a little bit that gets us closer to the wall in a situation where we're going to be 10 to 15 feet at that point. And then way over on the east side, there's a place where the wetlands kind of creates a pinch point and then turns off to the north, right in that one area there, where again, we're in that 10 to 15 feet situation there. But elsewhere, I think we've done our best to maintain, a 22 to 25 foot as a minimum. And then because of the snaky, again, I'll call it the curvy aspect of the wetlands flags versus the development, you get greater distances than the 25 feet. We have had a chance to look at the town engineering initial comments and then the agenda review as well. Obviously, some of the comments are incorporated here are really more geared towards TPZ site plan approval, but there's a lot that do correspond to wetland considerations. We basically, at this point, I don't have any significant issues with addressing those comments. I find nothing there that's unreasonable or that cannot be addressed with responses to the comments. And at this point, what I like to do is introduce Anthony Zemba from Land Tech. His firm did the flagging As Robin noted, they provided you with a full evaluation report dated back on June 3rd. And then I asked him to do a follow-up memo, really to talk about revisiting potential impacts to the wetlands as a result of construction. And then there was some comments regarding one line in the NDDB letter that was received from DEP regarding the possible conduct of additional biological studies. And Anthony can tell you what his opinion is regarding that matter based on the data he has found. And then he also did a vernal pool reevaluation. They went out again, as Robin pointed out, in June to take a look at the area. And I think you can read for his conclusions for yourself and what Anthony will present, but it doesn't look like we have any vernal pool issues on the site. So with that, I'll turn it over to Anthony. And then once Anthony's completed, then we'd be happy to answer either the public's questions or the commission's questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Anthony Zemba. I am a senior environmental analyst with Land Tech. I am a certified ecologist and soil scientist and certified hazardous material manager. I am assisting the FA Hesketh team on finding ways to minimize and reduce significant adverse impact to the wetland and watercourse resources on the site. The wetland delineation that was done by our firm last December is accurately depicted on the plan sheet, as David pointed out. This is a system that receives the majority of its hydrology from a stream that flows to the north underneath Route 6, west of the site and off site. And so it's, that culvert isn't depicted on this plan sheet because it's way to the west of, no, further west.
Oh, you want this?
The other way? Yep.
Oh, west. What do you?
Yeah, and it flows north. Yep. Into that wetland system there. That's the majority of the hydrology that's contributed through an unnamed riverine system. When that riverine system hits the vegetated wetland there, it kind of braids out into several slow flowing channels. There is one distinct channel along that northern property boundary as being shown there by the hand, and that flows to the east and again stays along that northern property boundary until it flows off-site to the east and joins another unnamed tributary stream that then flows south and leaves the site through another culvert to the east of our property. The box culvert area that's shown here and the exit in that existing 36-inch culvert that's depicted on that plan set, that drains a small portion of the wetland. Just kind of drains that area where the hand is. There's a saddle there in terms of topography. So it's really most of the significant runoff from the site and flows through the wetland system to the north of the site are flowing through braided stream channels through a larger wetland system, correct, as shown by the hand. So that wetland system there is what we call a plustrian interspersed system. At one time it was probably a a pond or some dammed impoundment that eventually filled in. It has a pretty flat grade throughout it, and probably through succession reverted through a successive cycle of a plustrian emergent wetland to a scrub shrub wetland, and then eventually was beginning to form a plustrian forested wetland. Recently, many of the trees that were growing in that system have been killed. A lot of the ash trees have been killed from the various pathogens that are wiping out our ash trees in the state. This has created a lot of open gaps in the canopy. The other dominant tree in there is red maple. So where the ash is dying out, the sunlight is reaching the bottom of that wetland system and allowing development of a pretty thick blustering scrub shrub community and emergent herbaceous community. So the dominant shrubs in there consist of alder, highbush blueberry, winterberry, and northern spicebush along the border of the upland and the wetland. The dominant herbaceous component consists of cinnamon fern, skunk cabbage, tussock sedge, and along the western portion of that wetland, there is a significant amount of common reed, Phragmites australis, probably due to all the influence of off-site runoff coming in through that pipe to the west of the site. So there is an invasion front of that common reed growing from the west to the east, and is a sign of off-site impact. What else can I tell you? Yes, we did investigate the areas for vernal pools. On my initial site visit in March, found one small basin near Colt Highway, and that area being indicated right there by the hand. However, we found that pool to be very shallow and suspected it did not have the hydro period necessary for the full development of obligate vernal pool species. It is a shallow basin. It does lack a fish community, and it does have more or less constricted inlet and semi-permanent outlet. But the fact that it's such a shallow system probably dries out very quickly in the year. It is receiving road runoff from Colt Highway and salt influences along with it. It renders it a more or less it impacts its utility as a vernal pool, and we did not find the obligate vernal pool species breeding in it that would seal the deal for its classification. In terms of some of the commission's comments on significance of the site for potentially harboring rare species, that line that was provided in the Natural Diversity Database response letter, in my experience, it tends to be more or less a caveat limitation that they include in all the responses where their database shows no known rare species stations. And so they simply say that, you know, the database is not a substitute for full-on biological field investigations where warranted. So, you know, we took a look at the site, and typically track rock ridges do potentially harbor rare species, but it's been my experience working on a number of sites in Connecticut along track rock ridges that these rare species tend to occur in special circumstances along these track rock ridges. And these are where you get unique physiographic features that form. For instance, if you have a coastal bluff track rock ridge, you may find listed species atop these bluffs that are adapted to extreme drought conditions from the ocean winds, from salt spray, and from direct sunlight. You tend to get xerophytic vegetation that are not found normally in other locations in Connecticut. except for maybe a barrier beach. And some examples that come to mind are Connecticut's native species of cactus, the prickly pear cactus, and the fragrant sumac, which is currently listed as state historic and extirpated from the site, from the state, but recent discoveries by me and others suggest that it is still occurring in Connecticut, but in those coastal locations. Other examples occur on western rock faces that are exposed to the afternoon sun, where that extreme afternoon sun heats up that exposed western face, and the shallow to bedrock soils combine with that exposure to form droughty conditions again. And this is where you'll find things like perhaps like post oak and wavy hairgrass, things like that. On the opposite end of the spectrum, sometimes those western facing slopes are shaded by an adjacent ridgeline. An example would be the Hanging Hills in Meriden, where in those valley areas between the two ridges, the adjacent ridgeline prevents that western exposure of the sun in the afternoon when the sun is at its hottest, and instead the western slope is shaded. And then we call these algific slopes. The talus that forms along the bottom of those slopes is very permeable to precipitation and snow, and you can often find ice down in the middle of that talus well into the summer months. And so basically what you have in those situations are conditions that are more representative of northern New England states like Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and even points further north. And therefore, the species that grow there are cold adapted and are rare because they're at the southern limit of their native range. Those conditions don't occur here on site. And so, we did not find what would signal to us a red flag that there probably is rare species occurring on the site. Nonetheless, we still, from our multiple site visits at this site, we have compiled a list of plants that's up over 100 species occurring on the site, none of which include rare or threatened, endangered, or special concern species. So we do not feel that further biological surveys are necessary due to the pretty effective characterization of the floristic community, the knowledge that the special habitat attributes that tend to support these rare species along track rock ridges in Connecticut don't occur on this particular site, and the lack of known previously recorded NDB stations in the area. That generic statement for conducting biological surveys, there's a lot that goes into doing biological surveys. And so typically when those surveys do happen, there are target species in mind that you design those surveys around. And in the absence of any of that knowledge from state regulators, it would be, it would not be prudent to conduct those types of investigations because they're time intensive, they're labor intensive. Sometimes they require special permits that you have to apply for. And by virtue of applying for those permits, the NDB wants you to know what you're searching for. And so, again, with the lack of those special habitat attributes, we have no target organisms that we feel are probably occurring out there, and therefore do not recommend surveys for this site. As far as additional measures taken to mitigate the wetland impacts, we feel that the use of retaining walls is always very important impact minimization measure. This site uses that extensively to reduce the footprint of the impact and to stay out of the wetland areas. The mitigation planting plans will help to seal the edge of the disturbance areas and occupy those space before invasive species can show up. They will provide cover and food for a number of different wildlife species. And my evaluation report addresses that. And it shows the value of each of those plants that were selected to the different species of wildlife that will utilize them for both food and cover. And the added mitigation areas now again, still offer more habitat for various wetland dependent species. I think that's all I have to say. And I'm open for any follow-on questions, or if there any additional information is needed that I didn't cover, please let me know.
So Robin, did you have anything else to add before we take on questions?
Yes, let me just turn my. Yeah. Anthony, I wondered if you could just, you set out on page, on the last page of your recent memo, you made some findings in terms of what you, in your professional opinion, the impact on the wetlands was, and I just wondered if you would reiterate that for the commission.
Yeah, so that's basically what I said. I closed with, you know, mentioning that installation and maintenance of those proper ENS controls during construction will avoid the temporary adverse impact that could have happened during construction. The use of the retaining walls and the mitigation plantings and proper construction of the drainage system will avoid long-term permanent adverse impacts to the wetlands as well. And with the current design that's proposed, you know, you're mostly staying outside of that minimum 25-foot separation distance, except for a few pinch points that David pointed out. And in many cases, you're well beyond that. So all these measures taken together with this revised submitted plan will ensure that no significant adverse impacts will occur to the wetland system on site.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Is there anybody else, or are you guys, or have you concluded your presentation?
We have, we would entertain obviously any questions that you might have. But no, unless David has anything else, as far as I'm concerned, we've covered everything we'd hoped to cover for you tonight.
Thank you.
Bruce, just out of curiosity, are there people online that are interested in speaking on this?
I have one attendee. Do you want me to open it up for a comment?
Yeah, I mean, if there's only like one or two people, then yeah, I would let them go ahead rather than have
Alright.
them wait until later in the meeting.
All right, if anybody, as this is a public hearing, if anyone would like to speak, please use the raise your hand on the Zoom function, and we'll open up your microphone. Does anyone want to speak regarding this public hearing? Again, if anyone wants to speak, just please use the raise your hand on the Zoom function.
Well, if
I
we're
don't
not
have
getting
anybody.
anybody now, we can always ask again.
Yep, we can do
before
that.
Sign off. So, all right, so I'll start with the commission members. Seeing as how Rich, I picked on you the last time, Mark, we'll start with you tonight. Any comments, questions, concerns?
The only thing, we got that email today from Land Tech, and it was kind of showing the vernal pool or the area the area of where the vernal pool was suspected. My question to Anthony Zemba is, I was looking by picture number 4. I think I saw 2 decent sized tree stumps. I don't know if they're ash or some other type of tree. I can't tell. The bark doesn't look like an ash tree, but is it possible in the future that if there are some plantings in that area, that the canopy cover would return, and maybe this would be possible as a vernal pool in the future?
Yeah, so its utility as a vernal pool is limited by its hydrology. So either with or without plantings, it's too shallow to be able to sustain, things like wood frogs, spotted salamanders, and fairy shrimp. You see stumps there because they're actually cut by DOT maintenance crews, because this pool actually occurs right at the toe slope of the highway. And actually, photo number 3, you can see a car passing in the westbound traffic lane right at the top of that slope. Whoever is showing that report right there is actually a better picture in that report that you're showing right now, because that was taken during leaf off conditions. And if you scroll down right there, you can see the highway, how close it is to the pool. You can see the guardrail right there. And so, walking through that pool, that water only goes slightly above my ankle. And it dries up very quickly. It fills up every time there's a major storm flow on the highway, because the storm flows discharge right into that little basin area there. And it never gets much deeper than that, because the outlet is regulated by the outlet stream to the east of it, which flows underneath, flows to that 36-inch culvert, existing culvert, and then south to Deadwood Swamp. So the vegetation maintenance is a periodic thing. They actually, I guess this morning they were continuing with that vegetation maintenance along that highway shoulder further down from the site as you descend the hill west of the current location. And you can see why a lot of that vegetation is growing up, and especially during leaf out, it's starting to shield some of the highway safety signs, warning motorists of curves approaching and things like that. So that'll continue to be maintained in the future. And it really would probably be a poor investment to try and make this a vernal pool without that sustaining hydrology. And in fact, what you could be creating is a sink, where you're enticing vernal pool creatures to perhaps attempt to nest in there, and then they would be killed by these different impacts.
Yep. All right, well, thank you. No further questions.
All right, thanks, Mark. Neil?
I don't have anything at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Robert?
Yeah, I've got a few questions. I guess my first question would go to either Dave or maybe Robin. Dave, in your presentation, you had said that a double access point would not be prudent, but I guess the question is, did you explore a double access to the site so you could eliminate the wetland crossing. And I recognize that Route 6 is a busy road and there would be some safety concerns, but I think those safety concerns apply whether there's one or two access. So I want to know if you explored a double access and it's something that DOT would explicitly prohibit, or if there was a study that said that a double access would have an unreasonable risk factor.
This is Dave. Yeah, we did take a look at that. I mean, in theory, you could physically put a second driveway, for the west side of the development. But again, from my professional engineering point of view, I really find the idea that customers who the main office and the bathrooms and the like and things of that nature will be located in the easterly building. That will be the focus of most of the energy. Having folks use what I perceive to be Route 6 as a substitute for this internal driveway, I just don't see from an engineering safety perspective that really makes prudent sense. And believe me, I would not be going through this effort to propose this crossing here, knowing full well the ramifications of it, as far as your decision-making process goes, and having to go to the Army Corps of Engineers. I would never, I would not be proposing this for any other reason other than that this, particularly in this section of Route 6, the driveway where we have located the principal driveway is the safest location from a sightline point of view and things of that nature. Even with DOT, I mean, I think we discussed this a little bit in the field with the members that were there. There's an outside chance that they may restrict us to a right turn in, right turn out only because of that issue. So that's something we will just have to live with if that happens, where hopefully we'll be able to convince them to allow the use of the full driveway. But adding a driveway to the west side, again, in my professional opinion, is not a safe and prudent solution to properly utilizing this property.
So I guess the question, Dave, for this commission is, if you were to add that second access point, would that reduce the wetland impact?
Well, it would take away the direct impact, the culvert crossing.
And that's what we're focused on.
Right.
Yeah, I think part of the problem also is the development in general sort of pushes the limit for impervious coverage. When we look at the number of pinch points, as you identified, less than a 25-foot separating distance from a commercial development to a wetland, from my perspective as a wetland commissioner, is extremely minimal. We tend to look for greater separating distances, even in the buffer zone. So I think when I look at potentially the unnecessary wetland crossing as a convenience, the minimal separating distances to the wetlands, the amount of blasting and filling that's required, perhaps this proposal represents an overdevelopment of the site given its restrictions. So with those thoughts in mind, I'd like to see all of the staff comments be addressed prior to our next meeting, which, and I appreciate the applicant's willingness to allow us to go out to September 7th. I think it's really important for me as a commissioner to have concurrence from the staff that all the comments have been addressed. And I appreciate the comment by the applicant that you believe you'll be able to address all of those comments without difficulty. I guess my next question goes to Anthony. Anthony made the statement that a biological study would not be prudent. Is the question, would it not be prudent from an environmental standpoint, or would it not be convenient from the development standpoint? I think there was a fair amount of discussion about the potential for vernal pool. I think the conclusions about no threatened or protected species, to have conclusions with a minimal review, you sort of, your answer is based on the question. So I think, you said it wasn't prudent to do a biological study. Is it really it's not prudent or it's not convenient?
Well, I just, like I said, in the absence of red flags, you know, you could go out and do full-on biological studies on any site that comes across your desk. And so I don't know, maybe prudent's not the word, but warranted. I don't see where it's warranted. Unlike some other Trap Rock Ridge projects that I've worked on in the state, where you do have these special habitat attributes. And if somebody said, oh, we don't think biological survey is warranted, you know, I would wholeheartedly disagree. You know, like I said, we identified well over 100 different species of plants on that property. So we know the communities out there fairly well. We just didn't find any of those red flags in terms of the biological component that's occurring there, or the physiographic conditions that tend to support these rare species. So, I mean, it just doesn't seem warranted.
I think warranted is probably a better word than prudent, given the significance of prudent from a wetland and conservation context.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
All right, thanks, Robert. Dave?
Yeah, I share Robert's concern both about the crossing and the kind of extensive development being proposed. It's kind of a tough site. I guess about 90% of it is our regulated area in between the wetlands and the 150-foot setback area. And virtually all of the proposal is within that regulated area. I was wondering about kind of shrinking the footprint a little bit, particularly the northernmost building on the western side. That on the east, so the eastern part of that building is very close to the wetlands, as well as maybe the road around back. Is there some way on the eastern side, the road around the back of the large building, some way to pinch that down a little bit, or make the building a little narrower, or something to provide a little bit more space to the wetlands to the north?
I can assure the commission I'm taking notes as you speak. So during this time frame, we will consider all these comments and questions as far as, you know, whether we can make some layout adjustments or something of that nature. That's going to be like a team meeting to figure that out.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Let me see. Also the wetland mitigation area that you're proposing, the two of them, you know, right adjacent to the highway. Just given the situation, you know, particularly in the winter, it's just going to be constantly bombarded with salt. What are the plantings proposed for that location going to be handle that, you know, hydrology regime of salt water?
Yeah, the plantings that we have proposed at this point, and then we're also going to do some reconsideration of that with staff comments that have materialized. Yeah, the intent would be to make this into you know, a tolerant man-made area, and serving kind of two purposes. One is to, you know, mitigate the loss of the small wetland area with the culvert crossing. And I think it also provides a good opportunity to provide, you know, a man-made wetland area to act as a small treatment area, primarily for the runoff that comes off of the highway. Whereas, you know, right now, there's not much of that going on. You have some ponding area in there with limited vegetation. And as Anthony pointed out, it basically just sheets off and heads directly to the 36-inch culvert under Route 6. So I think with some regrading in that area, using our wall as a buttress on one side. I think we can introduce some nice plantings that will be tolerant to that situation. And, actually, accomplish two things. One, some mitigation, and then also some opportunity to treat the state's runoff, at no charge to the state, so to speak, and maybe we can accomplish a couple of things there. So we'll address that, we'll specifically respond to that next time.
Okay. And if you do contact DOT about the second driveway, maybe you can mention that you're building some mitigation for them.
That's right. Yes. Thanks.
And as far as that last paragraph on the natural diversity database letter, I'm pretty familiar with those, having worked for the department for 39 years. And I would say I've seen that paragraph hundreds of times. And it is pretty much boilerplate. And in my experience, when I would get these comments from the database, I would ask them further, in this particular case, as Mr. Zemba was talking about, is there anything in particular that they should be looking for? A lot of times these comments were to state agencies who are going to be doing a full-blown environmental impact assessment. So that was, really directed to them to say, oh, just because you got the database letter doesn't mean that your environmental impact assessment doesn't have to be done. So I just wanted to throw that out for you.
And Mr. Fox, I did the same thing. On all of our projects now, this is standard operating protocol is to get these letters. And many a times it comes back with a specific concern that we need to address,
Right.
some species. And I also noticed that this when that's the case, this comment doesn't necessarily appear on those letters. So I think you're right in that this I'll call it a boilerplate type of statement shows up when they, as Anthony pointed out, when they haven't red flagged the site based on their database, they kind of throw this catch-all statement here. So one way or the other, that's why I asked Anthony to go back and think about it. And in their initial study, I was impressed at the listings of all of the various species that they've, spent the time to investigate on the property already. And as he pointed out, there does not appear to be any red flag as far as a species of concern or any of the other lists that the DEP has. So I think we can leave it at that. To be chasing around specific additional studies to try to find a species of some kind that has not been identified by anyone. That's sort of just like wandering around on the site looking for something that apparently does not exist. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Dave. Bobby?
I think David and Robert pretty much summed it up. I'm in agreement with them. I'd like to see a little bit more. It's pretty much walking all over our area. So I'd like to see some concerns addressed first.
That it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Rich?
Bruce, could you bring up the colored plan again? Thank you. I had a question on as far as your clearing limits on the wetland side of the proposed wall, how far from the base of the wall are you proposing to clear, and what kind of vegetation will be retained in that area? That was my first question. My second question was the box culvert that you're showing. Is that a 4-foot wide proposed box culvert that would be filled on either side of it with an open bottom? And then my third question is in the mitigation areas. They're proposed directly adjacent to the DOT right of way, which apparently DOT likes to clear cut the vegetation in that area. I'm wondering if an overzealous DOT maintainer might clear cut the mitigation area because just of where it's located. And especially the mitigation on the area on the left appears to have at least a 6-7 foot slope to it, as it's shown on the current plan. I mean, maybe you're going to revise that, but I'm just questioning a sloped mitigation area and how effective that would be. That's my 3 big concerns.
Yeah, let's say, so as far as the clearing, right in the immediate area in front of the walls, we generally will put the silt fence probably about 3 feet in front of the wall. These types of walls that we're proposing here are block walls. They're like essentially 2 by 4 by 2 feet. So there's not a large foundation associated with these walls. It's a stone base, and then the walls sit on a stone base. So it's not like a typical concrete wall or something that might have a 5 or 6 foot wide concrete footing that needs to be built. That's not necessary here. And in a lot of cases where the walls are going to be located, it's relatively level beyond that point up to the edge of the flag wetlands like we witnessed out in the field. So these walls are going to be fairly easy to construct. They're not very tall. They're in the order of 2 or 3 blocks high. So the installation of these things is going to go along pretty quickly. And then in that area, that's where we have the various mitigation type plantings proposed all along the face of the wall to help sort of restart Mother Nature's replacement of anything that gets disturbed in that area, which will occur pretty quickly. And that's shown on our MI1. As we talked about earlier, staff had some additional recommendations to the types of plants there. We'll work that out with staff and our experts, our landscape architect, and with Anthony to make sure that we have the right mix there that is the most effective plantings. Then the mitigation area, yeah, I think what it is this is a markup of the grading plan before I actually have the grading for that mitigation area shown. So I understand your question, and I'll address that with the revised plans. As far as I think I mentioned in the initial presentation, I'm trying to find an area on the site to do some mitigation that doesn't by sort of happenstance, it doesn't create another problem that's not here. I see sometimes on plans where people go to create wetland mitigation areas and that ultimately cause more trouble than they're worth. They disturb parts of the property that have never been disturbed before. And I see it all the time, and I often question, well, why are we doing that? But in this situation here, where we know this is a heavily disturbed area currently, I think this is an opportunity to clean up these areas, remove the road sand and things of that nature, and then replant it with tolerant plants that will be successful in this area, but they won't grow high. The big issue with the DOT out here is vegetation that grows high. And what happens is, as we know, with their limited resources and whatever, they have a tendency to allow these things to grow too tall, and then they come in and they just, massacre everything, as a solution to the problem, rather than trimming sight lines and shoulders on a more regular basis, and not use an 8-foot diameter high-speed lawnmower to do it. But that's the reality. So if we plant this area with low-lying plants, vegetation, wetland plants that do not grow over the top of the guide rail and things of that nature that has the DOT do what they do, then I think we can be successful in providing a pretty decent mitigation area in those locations. But the big thing is, again, the DOT does what it does because it waits too long to do it. And then their answer is to just, wipe everything out. So if we change the character of these areas and make them low-lying vegetation, and maybe we'll be successful and keep them out of there. And we'll discuss that with the district when we go to apply for our curb cuts and the work in the right of way. More than likely, they're going to make us sign a landscape maintenance contract with them. And once we do that, then they'll stay the heck out of our areas and say it's our, we have to maintain it.
Okay.
The culvert size, I'm sorry, the culvert will be 8 feet. It's a 4x8 culvert, so it will have a height of 3 to 4 feet, with a natural bottom, and then it spans like a bridge 8 feet. So the opening will be 8 feet wide and 3 to 4 feet high.
And how wide is that section of wetland that you're crossing?
It is around, because of its, well, let's see, it's skewed. So there's 2 dimensions. One is the culvert is longer than the span or the width because it's on a, it's angled. But you have the roadway through there, proposed driveway is 23 feet wide. And then we have about 3 feet of shoulder so that we can put our own little guide rail in there. And then the width of the wall. So we're looking at 23, 26, 29, 2-foot walls, 31, 30, about 33 feet from face of wall to face of wall. The culvert's about 50 feet long because it's skewed. It doesn't go directly across the road at a 90-degree angle.
And how wide is the wetland in an east-west direction along your center line?
Yeah, the wetland. Hold on just a second. I have a full-scale plan behind me, which if you would wait just 1 second.
Sure.
Yes, measuring down the center line, it's about 45 feet wide.
So we're impacting basically a 45-foot wide wetland area and proposing an 8-foot wide box culvert.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Ned, I see you snuck in.
Yeah, I was having some technical difficulties getting in, and I had to go into the general public line on the meeting agenda. But yeah, I was just a minute or two late. I kind of going along with some of the other commissioners have said, like on the west end with the 3 buildings. First question is does this project involve that small piece of property as well as the large piece, or is that separate property? I'm thinking.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
No,
sorry.
that will be merged in to create the 4.99 acres.
Okay.
So this project area is both lots. I'm sorry.
Okay. So like the length of the I guess the middle and then most north building, I was like, if we could like shorten the footprint on those to get them a little further away from the wetland, give us a little more buffer. And I was also wondering, I don't know if it's necessary for emergency access vehicles, but like on the easterly end where you have that roadway with the behind the block wall. I mean, is that necessary? Can you have two dead ends and then not need that circular curve there? I mean, these are just options that I'm talking about to see if we could increase that buffer area a little bit more. I'm not involved with permits at DOT, but I do work for DOT, and I do know that it would be hard. I'm not saying impossible, but it would be hard to get two cuts into Route 6 for this project. I don't know if they would let you do that, but I'm not sure. But I'm just my main comment is just, is there, if we need this building, that these buildings this big, I know you always want to try and maximize your storage space, but maybe this would be a little more tolerable if we shrunk some of the building space down and maybe lost a few units, but gained some more buffer zone. And I just want to confirm where you do have these block walls being built, you're gonna do plantings in front of the block wall. Is that
Yes.
true? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be extent of, we call them mitigation plantings, but plantings in general.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's my only comment. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ned. Yeah, I mean, I do have some stuff. Some of the concerns have already been expressed by the commission members. And I think just the way this is being designed is trying to maximize what you can get on the site. And it puts us in a little bit of a bind in terms of wetland buffers, things of that nature. So I'm a little concerned about the scope of the development. I want to go back to one of the comments with the blocks that are used for the retaining wall. Can you describe how those are actually installed? Because I understand where you're saying you don't need this big foundation, but are the bricks lowered in place from above and lowered into place, or do they have to go side by side? So are you going to have an area where you've got truck traffic or heavy equipment traffic on the outside where you have to go in and get closer to the wetlands where you're putting the blocks in?
Yes, that's a good question. That's sort of the beauty of this system. That's why these are so popular right now, is you don't need to do that. You can work from the top down or the back, of these blocks. So you put in your stone, then you put in a row, then you start your backfill, then you put in another row and you go more backfill, then you go to your final row, which usually is a landscape. So it has that little landscape notch at the top. So you can bring your landscaping right almost to the front edge of the wall. So really what you see when you walk along the top of these walls is you see about 6 or 8 inches of concrete edge, but the rest of it is vegetation right up to that point. And then in areas where it's taller than 4 feet, we put a little 4-foot high, black vinyl chain link fence just for safety, so nobody falls off the wall. But the nice thing about this is you don't need to bring machinery down in front of the wall. And I just built a very large one of these over in Bloomfield for an apartment complex that actually had, you could argue, a more sensitive wetland than this because it has a major brook running through along the side. And we were very successful in doing that and not causing any loss of that buffer area, beyond the silt fence barrier that we put up first. So you can successfully build these. And again, this is not a very high wall relative to some of the monster walls you see getting built on lots of sites these days. This is a fairly modest height wall. and should be pretty simple to construct.
In terms of the wall, are there any spots where you basically have to cut material to be able to put the wall in? Because
Well,
I can understand.
along the entire
where
length, you have to scrape out a stone foundation before you put
Right.
the wall in. Yeah.
But I'm just curious if there are any areas where you need to be cutting 3 or 4 feet of material that's already there in order to get to the grade to have that lowest block installed. Because again, I'm not sure how easily that's going to be done from above. So I just have some questions about how the wall gets installed. I mean, if it's relatively flat going into that area, okay, that's fine, and you're backfilling.
Mhm.
But I didn't look at the plans close enough to see if there's any potential cut in the areas where, to me, that would make it a little more difficult to install the blocks.
Yeah, I think you'll see that from the vast majority of it is it's pretty much following the contour lines. You know, we over on the east side, we actually blend into 2 large knobs that buffer the wetlands. The wetlands are actually on the downside of the knob, sort of like right there in the center of the picture now. There's a knob there, that 390 knob. So the wetlands are on the downside of that, and the wall would blend into that, that area there, and then further over to the east, right above that 187 contour line that's coming out of the building there, right above where it says first floor 388. There's another knob situation there where the wall will blend in from both sides, and then the wetlands is on the other backside of that knob. So for the most part, this thing is sitting on existing ground, and we have to scoop out a foot or so to put stone in and then start the wall. So, I really feel that, we will be successful in putting this thing in and stay within the limits of our silt fence and hay bale backing. There's no particular reason to go traipsing around, on the front side of the wall to finish this installation.
Okay.
If you don't mind me expanding on that, what happens if the soil is not adequate and you've got to do a lot of hogging out of some material? Has there been any soil testing done down here?
Sure.
No, but I mean, the entire area is, underlain with rock formations. So,
Yeah, here, I can see that up here. I'm just wondering down here in these lower.
Yeah, down in those areas. I mean, I have not done a specific test in that area, but just observing in the system, and the site in general, there's no real unsuitable materials out here.
Okay.
I could, if we were in a much wetter situation, and I would have a different design perspective and concern perspective. But in this case here, the type of soils that we have, once you get past the edge of the wetlands, going to be very consistent throughout this whole site until you get to the knobs. I call them knobs, the higher, features sticking out of the ground.
Okay.
Right. I've got a question dealing with, again, the natural diversity database letter. And I know that some animal species are pretty much sort of relegated to a specific type of soil. So for example, eastern spadefoots are Hinkley soils. You got hog-nosed snakes that are associated with specific types of soils. Was there an analysis done of the soils on site and any reference made from the soils that are on site to potential animals that might be out there? Because my guess is, and again, this is strictly a guess, but I think in this area where you have 2 large pieces of property to the north of this, both owned by the town, and there hasn't been any development there. So there's really been no reason for anybody to go out and check. I'm just wondering if anybody has done sort of a soil analysis to determine if there are any species that are typically associated with those types of soils.
This is Anthony Zembla from Land Tech. David, you want me to address that question?
Oh, yes, because I only know snakes I see, so.
Yeah.
And some of these are rather hard to find.
Yeah, so was that Mr. Hannon that was speaking there?
Mhm.
Yeah. Those are excellent examples that you provide, and in terms of rare species conservation in Connecticut, that's absolutely true for some species, and the models that are done, the predictive models that are done to look for those species are based on those types of attributes. It's not always soil type, but it can be, and you provided two excellent examples. You know, spadefoot toad in Hinckley, gravelly, sandy loams, especially in the greater Thames River service area. Again, the Holyoke soil series and the Holyoke bedrock outcrop series combined, yes, can harbor rare species when some of those other physiographic conditions that I mentioned are present. And so it's really, in this case, it's not just the soils, but it's a combination of physiographic conditions. And by that, we mean soil moisture, water holding capacity, wind exposure, sun exposure, things like that. So yeah, none of those soil types jumped out at me as being assigned to any specific rare plant or animal in this case. So I guess my answer to you would be not that I know of.
It's just, again, I just wanted to make sure that the soils were looked at to see if just by the soil type, it could have raised a red flag on something. There's a small septic system I know that's being proposed, but given all of the rock out in the area, is there actually suitable soil for installing the septic system?
Yeah, in the area that we have it shown in on, it's probably the UT plan there, Bruce. UT1.
Got the bottom
Yeah.
of my way. Is
Yeah,
it?
right over here, sort of,
Oh, there's it there.
right
Yep.
there. There it is there.
Yep.
The reason why I selected that area is my field observations. It looks like a good candidate, and there happens to be very close by to that a very large tree that tipped over, and it has about 4 or 5 feet of soil under the tree. And so that's my test hole for now. It's a very large tree. I'm not exactly sure why it tipped over, since it had such a soil mass associated with it, but you know, Mother Nature being what it is, it tipped over, and it gave us a really good indication of the soil that's available in that area. And I think we'll be successful. It's going to be a very small, just a couple of galleys in size. And the reason why I put it there is, in addition to the fact that I think the good soil's there, is you've got all kinds of setback requirements, in the state health code, 25 from this, 50 feet from that, all those things. And this area actually will meet all of those standards. So it's a good, safe place to put a small septic system. Even though it's kind of a pain to get over there, it's the best place.
And just out of curiosity, did you do any perk tests over in that area?
No, that's going to be next.
Tree hole?
Yeah, that's going to be next.
Okay, and then in order to get to that area, you've got I'm assuming some type of a grinder pump where, you know, it's a force main that you're using, because otherwise you're not going to get it up to a higher point.
Right.
So the construction of the force main going through the wetlands, what's the proposal for that? Is that going to be below the surface? Is it going to be tied in now with the box culvert? I mean, what are you proposing to do for construction in that with the sanitary sewer line?
Yeah, it would go down below the culvert. So we would install that first and then, you know, place the culvert in place. And then, you know, be pretty straightforward, pretty quick construction. It's, I think we sized it at like a 2-inch pipe. So it's like a 2-inch PVC pipe.
Okay. How long did the pipes typically run, or how long of a section can you get them?
Oh, they're generally, well, you know, a
The reason
2-inch.
I'm asking.
Yeah, the 2-inch PVC pipe comes in a roll.
Okay.
So it's probably 50, 100 feet of length or something of that
Okay,
nature.
that's kind of where I was going, because again, one of the concerns I would have is that if there's splices in and they're under the wetland area, I mean, it's just a concern I would have in case.
Oh, yes.
And things of that nature. So
Yes.
that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, there would not be push-on joints of any kind, that's for sure. They would either be solvent cement joints or a continuous pipe.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I don't really have any other questions, but again, I'll go back, and I am concerned about how intense the development is and how close you are to the wetlands, even though the work that's proposed within the wetlands is somewhat limited. I'm still concerned about how close we are in some areas to the wetlands. I've just got some concerns on it, and I'll leave it at that.
Mhm.
So do any other commission members have any other comments that they've thought of since other folks have talked? And then Bruce, I'll go back to you to see if there's anybody from the public that wanted to speak.
This
Are
is
there any
Ned.
other commissioners that want to add anything?
Yeah, this is Ned. I just realized another question. On the west end, the building that's most north, what is the back of that building going to be? Is that the back of the building going to be the wall for the, you know, because if you look at the contour map, it gets very steep in through there. And I'm just wondering, is that going to have to be like the back wall going to be deeper so that it acts as the back wall of the building and the retaining wall to?
Yeah, that's basically what we're proposing there, rather than bringing another driveway around the back side there or anything like that. It's, you know, it's digging in way over on the west side. And then over on the east side of that building, it acts as a pretty small retaining wall, actually, because like where you see the 392 contour,
Yes.
or spot grade rather, it's like 391 right in that spot. So there'll be, you know, like a foot or so of concrete exposed there. And then as you move further to the west, there's a knob right in that area. So it ends up being like a foundation wall in that area right in there. And so it does a couple of things. It's sort of like a foundation wall, and then it's a retaining wall as it goes across the back of that building. But again, once that thing gets built, and you restore that area, you know, plant it back there. Other than some maintenance, maybe somebody walking around the back side of that building for some reason, I don't think you're going to get very much, you know, activity behind that building after it's built.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce, can you just scroll down a little bit on that? I want to just double check something.
Hey, Gwen.
No, that's good, because I thought I saw something where there are electrical lines. I just want to be clear on this. These are 3-story buildings or 1-story?
No, everything on the west side is a 1-story
Okay.
building like you would see at,
Okay.
you know, most of the
Yep,
self-service.
okay.
places.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I had that clear in my head. Okay.
Sure,
thank you.
absolutely, absolutely.
So any other commissioners, any other questions right now?
I just have one real quick, because since we're talking about elevations, we haven't done test pits, so we don't know if it's sitting on ledge or not. What is your proposal for if you can't get a foundation in? Are we blasting?
Oh, some of the rock is going to have to definitely be blasted, yes. Some of it will be able to rip out, but there will be some blasting necessary to, especially in the knobs. I'm calling knobs. So like on this drawing that we have shown here right now, sort of like right here at the bottom of this first building where the FF, first floor 392 is,
Right.
there's a fairly decent sized knob right in that area. And that rock is going to have to be removed probably with at least some blasting anyhow, especially as you go deeper. But that's just a weird knob of rock right in that area right there. So in order to create the platform, or I call it the pad, you know, because you can see these buildings are fairly level. You know, we're going
Right.
from like 292 to 292 and a half, just to have a little slope in the pavement in front of them. These buildings are generally built with very few steps in them. You know, it gets complicated to try to build these buildings with a lot of steps on them. So that's one particular area right in there that's generating a fair amount of cut. But the good news is it's a long way from any wetland features anywhere. So, you know, shame on us if we can't remove that rock without any disturbance to the wetlands.
But it's still in the upland review area. Okay.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I can't dodge that. At 150 feet on this small lot, that's a lot of area. You know, that's a lot.
Right.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Bobby. Robert, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do have a question. Thanks, Mr. Chair. The question I have sort of builds off of the comment that Commissioner Fox raised when he noted that given the slopes, the possibility of winter maintenance materials going to the wetlands. Are there restrictions on use or materials that can be stored in the units? And if you have small contractors or people working on vehicles or equipment, any releases to the site are also going to discharge into the wetlands. So what are the general restrictions on use or materials being stored in the units?
Well, actually, Bruce in his report, I think, did an excellent job of listing things that you're probably going to make as a condition. And just bear with me 1 second while I sort through my pile a little bit. I think it's a good starting point, you know, for a condition of approval down the road if we get there. And it was in, maybe it's in his engineering report. But without wasting everybody's time tonight, we will come back with a specific list of things that will be prohibited. I can tell you now, typical things such as storing any quantities of petroleum products and things of that nature, or chemicals, will not be permitted in the units. And certainly no vehicles, cars, boats, things of that nature, you know, things with engines won't be permitted in the units. And some of that has to deal with fire ratings of the buildings as well. But we'll come back with a list specifically for the commission.
Thank you.
Was that it? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, Mr. Chairman, is it safe for me to say that, I mean, at this point, we've got some time. I think I hear from most of the commission members that they would like to see us go back and do some more homework and you know, attempt to increase some of the separating distances, buffer areas, whatever we'd like to call I'm not sure I can do much more improvement on the design of the culvert crossing. I think we've minimized that, and it meets the general criteria for general permit, satisfy DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers. But I think the comments that I'm hearing are concerns about some of the separating distances and whether we can improve upon that.
I heard the same thing, so I don't disagree with you. Bruce, is there anybody from the public that wants to talk?
I'll ask one more time. There is someone in there, but they're not raising their hand. So if anyone else, if there's anyone from the public that would like to speak, please raise your hand using the Zoom function. Again, anyone want to speak, please use the raise your hand function on the Zoom. Nope.
Okay. So, I mean, what I would like to do, and let me know, commission members, if you feel the same way, I would like to keep this open until, what is it, September 7th? I think with some of the issues that were raised tonight, I think it would be good to go back and just get a clearer understanding as to what everybody's perspective is going to be on this. So I would like to keep this open until September 7th. I think at that point in time, we should be able to close it. And then we can do what we need to do. But I believe that Attorney Pearson said that we could get a letter accordingly, giving us the time just to make sure that everybody's on the same page and we're all in good shape.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. We will provide that letter.
Okay, thank you. And I would send it in to the planning office directly.
Will do.
Probably address it to Bruce.
Okay.
Thank you. Bruce, I don't think we need to do anything further. Do we need? We don't need to vote on keeping this open till the 7th, do we?
We need a motion. Yeah, we need a vote.
Okay. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to September 7th, 2022. Is there a
Move, Ned.
motion? Was that you, Ned?
Ned, yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Forrest,
I'll second.
second.
Okay, so we have
was
a
that?
motion on the
We have
floor.
like 3 people.
So we have a motion on the floor to continue the public hearing to September 7th. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining. Okay, so hopefully by then we'll have more information and we can figure out where we go from there. But I would imagine we should be able to close it at the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
That's my
Yes.
intention.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and everyone enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you.
We'll see you in September.
Yep.
Well, that sounds like a song, doesn't it? Yeah. So.
Yes, it is. Happenings, I believe.
Good night.
Night.
Have a good one.
Under new business, Bill Aston, 110 Hyde Road.
Bill, are you on?
Bill's not on, but I am. I'm Brian Latigard. I also represent EBM Pabst.
Brian, all right, sir. How we doing? You want to give a little summary, a quick summary of what they talked
Sure.
about, and then we'll leave that back to the commission. Thank you.
Sure. Essentially, what we'd like to do is we'd like to take an asphalt path that connects the two of our buildings there, and we want to convert it to concrete and then put a like a rooftop covering over it between the two buildings. Basically, just a roof so that we can walk between the buildings without getting rained and poured on. And that's pretty much it. We've discussed it with this engineering firm, and you could see the pictures there. Basically, that asphalt path has it seems to buckle every year and move around, and we're tired of patching and replacing it. And our preference would be to replace it with concrete and then cover it.
Okay.
All right, so Ned, I'll start with you. Any questions, comments, issues?
No comment. I think it's just, or no questions. The comment is, it seems like a very minimal change in the amount of runoff, just going from a roof runoff to a sidewalk runoff, and I don't see a problem.
Okay, Mark?
No questions.
Neil?
No questions here.
Okay, thank you. Robert?
Just what's the general distance to the wetlands? I assume this is all buffer area work. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you're looking at that photo, it's off, probably, I would say maybe 30 or 40 feet off to the left in that photo.
Okay, thanks. I mean, I don't have concern with the proposal. It's largely going to come down to just a good soil and erosion control plan during the construction period. End of my
Yep.
comment.
That's actually quite a bit further than 30 or 40. The wetlands is down at the bottom here.
Oh, okay, okay.
So I don't have unfortunately, I can't scale on here, but I think you're probably in the 100 feet plus, probably.
Okay, okay. I was mistaken then.
Okay, no problem.
Is that it, Robert?
Yes, thanks, Bruce.
Okay, Dave?
I have no questions, thanks.
Bobby?
No, I thought we had discussed this at the last meeting, and I thought we were all in agreement it wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
That being said, maybe I'm confused, but I don't see a
Nope.
problem with replacing.
No, we did discuss it at the last meeting, but that's where we had to technically accept the application. Now we
Gotcha.
can vote
Yeah,
on it.
okay.
That's all.
I don't have a problem with it.
Rich?
No questions.
Okay, so we have the application before us. I mean, I'll also say I don't have any issues with it either, because in essence, you're replacing asphalt for concrete, and whether there's a roof on it or not, it's still going to flow into the grass. And I think we're also talking about putting in the additional yard drain, weren't we? I think on the other side of the
Yes.
walkway as well.
Yep, yep.
Okay, so seeing as how nobody seems to have a problem, would somebody care to make a motion to approve the application?
I'll make
So
the
move,
motion.
Mark.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second Eisner.
Okay.
Too many
Have a
then.
motion on the floor to approve the application for 100 and 110 Hyde Road. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining. Okay. Good luck with it. Hopefully you
Great.
get it done with the dry season. Make everybody's life easier, including yours.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you. Good luck.
Yep, with you.
Brian Rodriguez, 9 Apple Tree Lane.
Hello? Yes.
All right, do you want to give a little summary? This is the plan that you had last meeting, showing the garage in the back. You want to update them? I'll go to the next page of what the plan you had submitted just recently.
Yes, I canceled the garage in the back completely. And I'm just gonna go forward with the sunroom and the pool room. And the pool room, I'm gonna put an aqua shield on top of it. That's a glass shield. The company comes and puts it over the pool alone. And that's basically it.
Okay, so Ned, start with you. Any questions, comments?
All my concerns were with the garage and how and extended driveway. I don't have any questions about the pool.
Okay, thanks. Mark?
No questions.
Neil?
No questions here.
Robert?
No questions, just comments. Mr. Rodriguez, just work with the planning staff on the scheduling and soil and erosion control measures, should it be approved. That was my only comment.
Okay, thank you. Dave?
No comments.
Bobby?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it now that the garage is gone. No comments.
Rich?
No problem. No question.
And I'll echo other folks, with the garage being gone, I don't have a problem with it either. So can somebody make a motion to approve the application as it's been modified?
So moves, Ned.
Is there a second?
Second, Rich.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the application at 9 Apple Tree Lane as modified, so there's no garage associated with the development. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstaining? Good luck, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now we have 30 Portage Crossing. This is a new one, Bruce?
Yes, this is. This was an application that we received, or that I met with the owners right before, or right the day of the last meeting. So I met with him out there in the field. We formulated a application package to put together. And what happened? There we go.
It got bigger.
No, yep. And the applicant is online. Are you there?
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
All right, I'm going to get to this. If you want to give a little summary of what you're looking to do and update the commission, please. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. And thanks everybody for, entertaining this package. So a quick background, if you can see in the layout, that the existing house there, what we are trying to do is we're trying to get some solar panels on the roof. So the solar company came in and they kind of did a site evaluation, but the concern that they raised was that I have a tree line starting from the north on the east side of the property, starting from the north, which is on the road that you see on the front, which is Portage Crossing, going back to south, and that entire tree line is blocking, and it's a pretty tall trees blocking the entire roof. And as a result, the solar company stated that, hey, you need to do something with the trees. And is there a way that you can, clear off the tree line on the right side of the house so that it gets unrestricted sunlight from, sunrise till, I would say, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, which could improve the energy efficiency or the energy generation on the rooftop solar panels. So that's where, we wanted to kind of check before we do anything on the tree line. I wanted to check with the town whether there is an agreement to do that activity. Now, when I met with Bruce, obviously Bruce did inform me that there is a wetland behind our house. At that point of time, it was certainly dry because of the summer season. So I kind of wanted to check and seek your blessing before I move forward.
Okay. Ned, questions, comments?
Yeah, what are you gonna do with that area? Like, can you put low-level brush in there? I mean, or were you gonna make lawn? Because I think the lawn would be lesser, wouldn't be as advisable as if we try and keep it just, natural brush or natural planting, something like that in that area.
Yes, correct. So the idea is obviously, once we level the trees, we put dirt on it and then put some natural trees so that it acts as a partition as well between our house and the neighbor's house. So, it'll be better landscaping as compared to what we have today.
Okay. Thank you.
Mark?
No questions.
Neil?
Yeah, just to clarify, are you talking about taking all the trees down in that green shaded area?
That is correct.
And the wetlands is within that area?
No, wetland is, and Bruce, you are the numbers guy. So I guess there's a pool, 200 odd feet away or something like that, right?
Yeah, this was a conservation easement and a wetland area, comes up down through here, and then it drains out into this yard drain here, and then crosses over to Portage Crossing. And what I did is, let's see, open this one. I did prevent a copy of the Wisteria Lane approval. That's kind of a gauge a little bit more of how large that wetland is, because there's not much. So here's 30 Portage Crossing again. This shows that little stub of wetland out here, but it actually does get fairly large and comes out into this whole area. And this portion was flagged as a vernal pool in here during the development of the project.
Okay, so the picture we showed before of the water and the trees, can we go back to that and tell me what's coming down?
They go back to the other ones then. Nope, that's these.
Yeah,
So
that
they're
one.
standing in the backyard looking out, and what they're looking to do is remove all of these trees all the way back to the property line. So I kind of panned from left to right here. So continuing down through here, all the way down to the back property line, which is somewhere back here. I had them, as you see in this application, I had them break it here just in case what the minimal, if the first request was for the whole thing. I suggested they come in with an alternate plan that would possibly be more feasible to you, to the actual commission, which would be reducing the clearing to only, we'll say, off the back of the house and going towards the front, leaving at least some portion of the tree wooded area.
Okay, I think there was one more picture that showed some wetlands.
Oh, that was the older picture. That was from last year.
Oh, that one, yeah.
Yep. So again, his house is over in this area here. Here's the wetland. It comes out, it bleeds into that swale and drains right over into that yard drain right through there.
Okay, but those trees aren't coming down?
No, it's all, let me go back to the other picture. So there's the two there's the two requests. Here's the yard drain here. So they'd be looking to go to the right of the yard drain to the back of the property line. So looking at it here, you'd be clearing these trees here. All right.
Okay.
If I can get a better picture. Of course, yeah. The yard drain is over here. So they'd be looking to clear these trees, like from this tree all the way forward, approximately.
Okay, thank you.
Was that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Robert?
So if I understand this correct, this is all just within the buffer area. The wetlands are actually off the property and it's not within the conservation easement.
Exactly.
Yep. So looking at this, I actually think this falls within the exemption for residential use as of right. It's all buffer area, not wetland proper itself. So I'm comfortable with it as a residential use as of right.
Okay. David?
I was looking at that Wisteria Lane thing.
Mhm.
So it's, the clearing is about 200 feet from the vernal pool. Is that right?
Yeah, approximately. And again, this is where they ended the survey. Where that goes, I don't know. I don't have an exact, I think it was more dealing with this development and they were looking for this section, so.
And between the house and the property line, that's grassed presently.
This way, you mean?
No, the other way.
Yes, yes, if you go back,
Okay.
you can see, distance better here. Oh. I must have closed them out.
So there's a lawn in between the trees to be cleared in the vernal pool.
So here's the back of the house. There is lawn that stretches out
Okay.
here and comes around.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, Bobby?
Yeah, if I heard correctly from the applicant, once those trees come down, he's gonna fill it in with dirt, which means you're basically displacing all that water and putting it somewhere else, which could cause a problem. I'll be honest, maybe I'm not in the majority, but I'm not a big fan of solar, especially when most likely it's gonna be a 15-year lease, if I'm not mistaken. Or are you buying these solar panels or are you leasing them? All right.
Sorry, I'm buying these.
Okay. So we're gonna cut down mature trees in pretty much a wetland area to put up solar panels that may or may not be there for a duration. So I'm having some hesitation with this one. I don't like it, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you. Rich?
I'm a little confused. Is he doing the entire side of the property, or are we leaving some of the trees in the back?
I had asked for as I said, the initial review or the initial request was all the way to the back property line. I had suggested that he come in with an alternate just in case if the commission was in opposition to this full clearing. So again, coming off the back of the line of the house more or less, because the panels are going to be, if I go back to these pictures here, you can see more or less drawing a line off of here. The panels would be on this side of the roof and over here. So with these trees being removed, he would get the sun coming over that way, therefore not having to remove all those. So that is just strictly up to you guys, but I had him put an option in there just in case.
Yeah, I would encourage taking advantage of that option. That's all I have. Thank you.
The panels going on the roof, are they an eastern exposure or southern exposure?
The panels are going to be on the southern side, back of the house.
Okay, because one of the things that I will say, and this is from a personal perspective, I have solar panels on my house, and before we put them on, we actually had the company come out here and identify what specific trees needed to be taken down. And I don't see any reason why the trees, at least from the street, was it a 50-foot setback for the front yard, Bruce?
This one is
yeah, because that has no impact on the solar panels. So I guess my concern is going in and cutting down everything in that area
50 foot.
when I'm not sure that's absolutely necessary.
Right.
I understand about putting solar panels on. I understand the uses of shading. But I also understand what happens when something gets clear cut. And I'm not sure that that's something that's absolutely necessary right now. I mean, some of the trees didn't look like they were that high. My guess is typically what you're looking at is exposure from 10 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when you want to make sure you're not in the shadows. So there are some trees I can see that are definitely tall enough where they would need to come down. But some of the smaller ones that you see there, it looks like maybe a 3-inch, 6-inch diameter tree. Some of those would still be viable, you know, and I don't think they'd have to be cut down. So I think this is something that would need to be looked at a little more closely in terms of just exactly what needed to come down versus what you want to come down. I'm just not overly thrilled with going in there and cutting all the trees down at this point in time because it's not necessary, especially up in the front part of the yard. So I'd like to see a plan that's more selective in terms of how it actually impacts the solar panels. And that's something that the company should be able to identify what trees should come down. And I'm saying that from experience, both personally here and also having reviewed a number of solar projects across the state in a number of different capacities. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on it.
Mr. Kumar, are the panels only on the back of the house, or are they on the front as well?
So they are stretching to the, I would say from east till west, but at the same time during winters, the, sun moves a little bit towards the northern side. So, that's the reason why even the trees towards the front do impact the energy generation capacity of the solar panels.
But are you putting panels on the front as well, or just on the back?
On the back.
Okay.
And they're going to tell you in the wintertime, don't plan on getting much in the way of power because you won't get power in the wintertime. It's maybe 10 to 15% of the summer, maybe, if that much.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Commissioner, that during winter, the energy generation is going to be lesser. And they stated that it's probably the panels on the highest part of the roof that will generate the maximum power, except for the ones at the bottom. And that's where the tree line comes into the picture, the northern side tree line.
I'm sorry, but I just don't necessarily buy what they're selling. Having put them on, we were able to go in. I think we had to clear 9 trees, and we've got woods on the entire southern side of our house, and we had to take down 9 trees, not the whole woods. So I just think that they can be a little more selective in terms of looking at it and what needs to come down. I mean, yes, I can see that there are some large trees there that probably do need to come down. But again, I don't think it needs to go all the way out to the street. And I would be looking at more selective cutting in terms of what would be possibly shading the house. But again, that's just my take. There's other commissioners here that may have their own opinion on it. So
I'm just going to throw out the suggestion also. You may want to talk with an arborist about topping them. I don't see why they have to come completely down. You may be able to top them.
Okay.
So, but I think I know, Robert, you were saying you thought that this could be something that could be done, by right. How do other folks feel about that? Because
I would disagree with that. I think that this is a significant cutting of the area, and we're in the upland review a little bit, and I agree with you. I don't think I like the idea of leaving the trees in the back, or at least having a plan of what really need, an evaluation and a plan, and then that can be given to us to show both how much, exactly what's going to be cut down, and then what kind of plantings are going to go in there, so that it's not just, broken soil, and how is it going to be maintained? That's what but I think we can accept the application, but at the next meeting, I would expect to see, a little better idea of exactly what's coming out and going in.
that's kind of why I was raising it. So Robert, I mean, just to, again, get some feedback from you. Given some of the issues and the concerns that commission members have expressed, would you be open to having this come in through an application process?
Well, I certainly agree with all of the discussion about trying to minimize the number of trees that need to be cut to maximize the solar efficiency. But I think that from applying the regulations, I think this falls within the residential use as of right, whether the property owner wanted to install a shed, a pool, regrade the yard, it's buffer area only. It's not covered by conservation easement. I think we're being too regulatorily heavy, but I'm a single vote and I have no concern if the commission wants to put it through a full application.
Well, let me go back and start with the commissioners and we'll do a quick survey. Ned?
Yeah, I would like to see an application and a
Mark?
better details.
Okay. Mark?
I don't see a need for an application. That's just me.
Neil?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards an application.
Okay, Robert, you said no. Dave?
Yeah, I think I would like to see an application with a more selective plan. For
Bobby?
Yeah, I agree. You know where I stand. I'd like to see an application with a little bit more detail. Unfortunately, Chair, I have to step away. I apologize, but you know where I stand on this.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. I appreciate
Will
it.
you be back tonight or will we see you on the 7th?
You'll see me on the 7th. I got an emergency I have to take care of.
Okay. No, good luck with it.
Thank you.
Good luck. See you later.
Rich?
I don't necessarily think we need to see an application, but I do agree that a more selective clearing plan would be appropriate. And I would like to thank Mr. Kumar for taking the effort to bring this before us, because there are many other people that wouldn't have done the right thing. And I really appreciate you bringing this to us to allow us to take a look at it. Thank you.
I will echo that. I do thank you for coming in first and talking to us before just going and doing it. It makes everybody's life easier. I mean, I get, my concern is what ends up being cut down. Sun comes up in the east, goes down on the west. So I don't see the trees in the front part of the yard needing to come down at all. And I would be thinking it's more selective in terms of what will actually impact the house. I mean, it may be that there's 8 or 9 trees. It could be 12 trees. But again, I don't think it's the entire area. At least not for the purpose of putting in the solar panels. You should be able to have somebody come out and tell you specifically what trees need to come down as it relates to a shading issue, because again, the shading, what it's going to do, it's going to lower the production of the solar power that you actually generate. So yeah, you want to try to maximize it, but at the same time, you can tell just by looking at some of the trees, you don't need to take everything down in there. So I'm just having a hard time trying to figure out how, we deal with it, because if we don't have an application and we're saying that you can do what you want as a residential property owner, I'm concerned that more is going to get cut down than what absolutely needs to get cut down. I mean, I do agree with that from a perspective. I'm just concerned with what's being proposed here. And I would have been more concerned had you cut the entire eastern boundary line down. But I know that that's sort of split off at Bruce's suggestion. So that was a good thing, because again, I think it's overkill with what's being proposed to try to get solar panels on the house and have them generate to the maximum. I just don't see the need for doing the trees on the northern part of the property, or the street line of the property, because we didn't have to do it and that didn't change anything again. And I'm basing my comments on what I've actually seen here. And we had people come out and say, these are the trees that need to come down. They came out, they marked them. Not just, well, you got to take them all down. I don't buy that. I think they can be more specific than that. So that's where that's where I'm having my problem. I mean, I'm thinking an application simply because I want to make sure we know what's going on. And that's so I'm kind of leaning towards the application. It may be a little bit more than we normally do, but again, I have a difference of opinion in terms of what needs to be cut down than maybe what the solar people said, just take it all down. I don't agree with that. So I think from based on what I've heard, I think it's almost an even split right now with an application. But would somebody like to make an application to accept the application, or would somebody like to make a motion to accept the application? And we'll go from there. Start with that.
So moved, Ned.
Is there a second?
And Mark,
Okay. There's a motion on the floor to accept the application, which will at least get this process going. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, so we will accept the application. The goal right now would be to try to refine it for the September 7th meeting.
Would an application by the solar panel company, not an application, but would a report by the solar panel company? I think they usually provide something like that, right? Indicating trees that need to be cut.
Yeah, I mean, they
Okay.
should. I mean, I'm sorry, but to me, it's not compatible to cut everything down. It's not acceptable to me.
Work with the applicant and we'll work with his solar company and get you guys something.
Yeah,
for
and
next
then
meeting.
work with staff so that we have a better understanding. But I think one of the things that's clear is of the two versions that were shown, I don't think that southern portion needs to come down. I mean, I'd be more concerned about that. But again, let the experts go out there and figure out what needs to come down. Usually it's going to be trees that are about 30 feet tall or higher. I can see that there are trees that are 30 feet or higher, but I think that's what needs to be worked on.
Okay. Thank you.
That's something you should be able to work with the solar company on.
Yeah, so commissioners, may I ask you a couple of questions, please?
Sure.
Yeah, so I understand the southern part of the patch that Bruce had brought up on his screen. And I can certainly work with the solar company and ask them to specify clearly the trees that need to be taken down, right? 1, 2, 3, whatever the number, right? But then my question is going to be that, it's a stretch of land. We cut down the trees from the middle. Obviously, even from a landscape perspective, it won't look good, right? So my question is that the northern side is totally outside the purview of wetlands, or you can say even the buffer area. So isn't that something that as a property owner, I should be able to decide on the northern part of the trees? So, obviously, one, I accept, I can certainly work with the solar company. Number two, on the northern side, I just wanted to understand that is there a limitation with respect to that? Because it's certainly way outside the wetland.
You're correct. It's outside the wetland. And I mean, again, the purpose of cutting the trees down was for putting up solar. And based on that premise, to me, the trees in the northern part of the property don't need to come down based upon what I have seen on, I can't tell you how many solar projects in the state of Connecticut. So with that being the case, I mean, you can probably go in and do some work there too, but I think the first thing to do is talk to the solar panel company and see what trees they think need to come down. Because again, you're telling us you need to take the trees down for the solar panels, but it almost sounds like some of the trees you want to take down just because you want to take them down.
See,
so I'm looking at it from the perspective of you're talking about taking trees down as it relates to the solar panels. And I don't think that the trees on the northern part of the property are really associated with what you'll produce from a solar perspective if the panels are put on the house. That's all I'm saying. So you may be able to do work there anyway, but I don't think it's attributable to the solar panels.
Which I completely, and that's the reason why I said, I accept that I'll work with the solar company to get specific trees that would interfere with the sunlight. But at the same time, what I wanted to understand is that Once that gets done, obviously that leaves then a patch in between of cleared land, and then you have trees on the northern side. So that's the reason why I was asking, the buffer that is there, as a resident owner, can I take a decision on that, or can I, during this meeting, can I decide also upon the northern part of the land? Because if I am to do landscaping on that cleared patch, I would rather do a landscaping on the northern part as well, is what my ask is.
I understand what you're saying. I mean, it's your property. You're able to do sort of what you want to do with it. If you're within the 150-foot setback line of the wetlands, then it's something that comes to us. It may be that northern portion is outside the 150-foot upland review area. And then if that's the case, we really don't have any control over it.
Yeah, and what I've been told is the area, even the starting point, even the initial proposal was like 217 odd feet away from the wetland area.
No, that's the wetland over here, and that's kind of what so I pulled this map up. That's for this wetland, and there's a vernal pool over here. That's what I was measuring to, the vernal pool. The wetlands actually creeps up into your property, as you know, up into here. So that's what I was measuring, that if you come from the back, if you come from the back property line here to the front property line, you're at 164 feet. So everything up to here technically is probably within the 150-foot review area. Because go back to the other plan here.
So he has the wetland limit on his property?
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
Oh, okay. Well then.
See what I was actually measuring the vernal pool, but as you can see, the wetland line comes up to here. And then when you look at the as-built,
It's on his property.
Right here, this is the conservation easement. This is the wetland here. So the wetlands come right up to the back of the property line.
Oh.
And then they bleed out into this yard drain, and it goes out into the town highway. I mean, into the roadway.
Okay, so.
But it almost, what's the dark hash line where the conservation is that wetlands?
This was, I think, either the aerial wetland or whatever when this subdivision was first developed. And I didn't dig too deep into the full thing, but the wetlands is located here, and the conservation easement was then set here. So.
Okay. So, but for the most part, that entire area pretty much falls within the 150-foot buffer setback area.
And if you look, I go back to the other one here. Yeah. 168 feet. So pretty much, as we said, is the wetlands is like, over here, sorry, 169 feet. So the wetlands is all pretty much here. So pretty much most of this will be within the 150-foot review area.
So I think the first thing to do is work with the solar company and let them identify what trees they think need to come down. I can't believe that it's everything. But yeah, I can believe that there will be a number of trees that they would suggest that come down.
Okay.
And then come back on the 7th, and hopefully by then we've got things kind of worked out and figured out for you.
Okay.
Okay. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
It does a little bit. I agree. Yeah.
I understand your frustration, but talk to them and see what happens, because it may be that not nearly as many trees need to come down as you think, but then again, I'm just basing that on the purpose of putting solar panels on the house. So if that's the case, the trees in the front are not going to have any impact whatsoever on the solar panels. So,
Okay.
okay. So we'll see you on the 7th.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Planners report.
I do have two things that popped up after the agenda review went out. One of them was I received a phone call today from the Farmington River Watershed Association. They're asking, they have some money they would like to spend before the end of their, I think she said the federal fiscal year, which is the end of September. So they're working on doing some additional work. If you guys recall, the Trout Unlimited had did some work down on, here's a Meadow Road, here's Tungus Mead. They had done some work with the Bittersweet in here. So it was a small group of volunteers. So Farmington River Watershed is looking at getting a price for a professional to go in there and work along this section and possibly up to the river, up to the bridge here, or do something along the back of the ball field on Mawassa. So unfortunately, it's a last minute thing. The work needs to be done, or they have to contract it, and the work needs to be completed by the end of September. So seeing that we won't have a meeting in August, we may be pushing the envelope on this. So if they come back to me, I guess I'm asking for the commission, if they come back to me with a plan, does the commission have any concerns with the staff approving this with the condition that we stick with the Trout Unlimited conditions of approval, which was just no actual spraying of herbicide, and if they do anything, it would be a spot treatment of the bittersweet. But the intent is to not pull the bittersweet down. They're going to do the same thing where they cut it. If it flays away, then they don't need to. But if it stays there, they'll cut out a foot or two section and pull it out, and then therefore the upper portion of the plant will actually die.
What do you think, Ned?
Well, I mean, I don't think Trout Unlimited is going to go crazy with anything that would hurt the environment. So I think it would be all right.
Mm-hmm. Again,
I mean, they do this. They've done this other locations, like you said, and
yeah, Trout Unlimited did the work early in the spring before anything started to leaf out. So I'm not sure if they missed some stuff or what. Again, it was a small group of volunteers, but now Farmington River Watershed wants to have a professional come in and walk this again and just double, hit the spots that they didn't do and finish up on some other areas. So.
What do you think, Mark?
I think it's a great idea. There's a lot of invasives in there, and if they start pulling down, killing canopy around there, I think that's a negative aspect to the river. So I think getting rid of these nasty little buggers is probably a good idea.
Okay, thank you. Neil?
Yeah, I'm okay. Giving Bruce and the town the authority to do that.
Robert?
I agree. We don't need a full application as long as they're going to follow the guidelines that we established before. And Bruce reviewed those. We were concerned that they'd be, disturbing the ground by pulling up all the plants, and there was going to be no mass spraying. As Bruce said, it was just going to be, individual treatment of the stumps, which is a pretty conservative approach. And, I think we all agree that if they can eliminate the invasives, it's going to be a positive versus negative impact on the river and ecosystem.
Yeah, David?
Yeah, I agree. If they do all those the same requirements as the other one, that would be fine.
Okay, Rich?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Sounds good.
I don't have a problem either with it, Bruce, so I think you've got your marching orders on it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. And the other topic was Commissioner Eisner had given us some information regarding the bottle bill. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I am looking into that. I am trying to get the information out of finance. Unfortunately, he's on vacation. So I've sent him an email. So when he gets back, we'll go over if we did receive any of that money from the bottle bill, can the commission use it as under some kind of conservation project, or has that already been earmarked through some other conservation project that I'm not aware of? So once I hear back from them, I will definitely will let you guys know. All right.
We're probably paving with it.
I was
Bruce,
just thinking
that
if
money,
it's money
Bruce,
that we can use for a project.
No,
then we can
I
one
know
with
it.
a bittersweet.
I know what you're talking about because, yeah, part of the miniature bottles, they're charging a fee, and then that fee is supposed to go back to the towns for conservation work or litter pick or whatever they want to call it. So I've heard that as well.
yeah, and Bruce, the details, and I can forward a link to you. It was Public Act 2158.
Yep.
And it's the last section, I think it's section 10. And it says that nickel charge, it's not refundable, unlike the other, soda cans and beer
Exactly.
cans. And it's dispersed to the towns twice a year by the statute. The statute said, what the towns could use that for. It has to go into a dedicated fund. It has to be used for sustainability or litter protection projects. And there are some specific examples, like you can, improve your catch basin system so that you can minimize litter that's going to go down the storm drain, or you can buy, litter cleanup equipment. There's things that are specified in the statute, but I can forward you a link. It was, again, Public Act 2158. I don't know where it was codified, but it was the last section of the bottle bill revision. And it's based on the sales. So it's, I think, the first payout to Farmington, whatever it was in that email that I sent you, Bruce, I think it was, just
Like
under
$8,100.
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's it.
Thank you. I'll get back to you guys on that. When I hear, I will definitely let you guys know. All right.
Yeah, because I mean, the bottle bill started off as a litter prevention bill, so it makes sense if they're tying it into litter per se.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that it on planners report?
That was it. That's all I had.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of July 6, 2022 wetlands meeting? And we also have the minutes for the site walk, don't we?
You are on top of it. We were just chatting about that. So, all right. That's the 9th. I think I have it.
Yep. 7/9.
Yep.
So they're July 9th.
Yep. So the meeting on the 6th and the site walk on the 9th.
So can I get a motion to approve those?
So moved, Rich.
Is there a second?
Dave will second.
Have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes of July 6th, 2022 wetlands meeting and the July 9th, 2022 site inspection wetland minutes. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining?
I'll be abstaining, Mark.
Okay. And we will close this part of the wetlands meeting at 9:39 and open up Conservation Commission. So I don't think there's any other business. Planners report.
I don't have anything. I probably should have brought up the bottle bill under Conservation Commission. So I'll slide that over after. All right. Yeah. It's getting late. Sorry.
You're allowed. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the July 6, 2022 Conservation Commission meeting?
So moved, Ned.
Second? Is there a second?
Second, Rich.
Okay, have a motion to approve the minutes of July 6, 2022 Conservation Commission meeting. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining?
That's me again, Mark.
Okay. So at 9:40, we can close this, and everybody have a good August. Try to stay cool, don't get overheated, and we'll see everybody back here on September 7th.
Very
All
good.
right, everybody. Thank
Happy
you very
summer.
much.
Have a nice summer.
Take care.
All right.